I am now very pleased to welcome Ian Symmonds as our afternoon keynote speaker. Strategist, author, visionary, consultant. These words, it seems to me, merely suggest but do not capture the breadth and depth of his talents and his interests. Over the past decade, as president and founder of Ian Symmonds & Associates, he has served over 160 independent schools, colleges, universities, and nonprofit organizations through enrollment, marketing, branding, and strategy counsel. Many of the schools represented in this room have been the beneficiaries of his expertise. Long before becoming a consultant, however, Ian was a practitioner. His professional practice as a senior officer, executive director, and dean spans nearly 2 decades, including Pacific University, Culver Stockton College, St. Mary's Hall, and Trinity University. He is one of the few highly successful enrollment and marketing professionals in the nation experienced in recruiting and retaining independent school students, traditional undergraduates, and graduate and adult students. He led dramatic enrollment turnarounds for 3 different private institutions during his career. Ian holds a BS and MS degree from Illinois State University. He has presented at just about every national and regional independent school conference, including ours, so it is a real pleasure to welcome him back. Ian Symmonds.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good to see you. It's great to be here. I have to actually say that I come to you with an incredible posture of peace and gratitude. It's always wonderful to get back to SAIS. Years and years and years ago, many of you probably know this, and some of you might not, I wrote a white paper. It was on enrollment at the time. I'm not exactly sure what it was about beyond enrollment, but I was asked to present it in a small little cupboard-sized room at NAIS at the time, and Tom Redmond was the person that introduced me. He came to me afterward and said, I would love it if you might come and share that with some people at SAIS at the next conference. I want to say that was probably around 2000, 2001, and every year I've had an opportunity, most of the time, to come back here. There was one year I skipped. I took my daughters to the U2 concert in Los Angeles. Lori said, okay, that's okay, I can see that. But it's just great to be back with you. It really is. So it's really, really fun. I always have fond memories. And I always see people, so many of our schools that we've worked with that I count among just friends and colleagues and everything else. So I also want to say real briefly, I had a chance this summer to do something I really hadn't done before with SAIS. So I know so many of the schools and have the opportunity to work with so many of the schools. What I hadn't had a chance to do is I hadn't really had a chance to work with the staff very closely. And so I had a chance for 2.5 days to work on the strategic plan with this wonderful new president we have, and with Lori and with Damien. And I got to tell you, it's just a best-in-class organization. And they're not paying me to say that. I just mean that we get a chance to work with a lot of regional associations, and it was a great time. I mean, they really, really rolled up their sleeves. They worked hard. They just really, really worked hard as a board on the strategic plan, and just really, really phenomenal. So it's just great to be back and great to be with you all. So many of you probably know our firm. I won't spend much time, but we have worked with a lot of independent schools. We work in the independent school space and the private college space. And about 10% of our work is with the occasional nonprofit. We have a division of our company called Just Cause. It's designed to kind of work really hard at going after poverty and using education as a means to that end. And this last year, we had an opportunity, just to give you some sense of knowing where some of our roots are with SAIS, to work with some really phenomenal schools. So we got a chance to do the strategic plan for Battleground Academy, wonderful, wonderful institution. Franklin, Tennessee. Carlisle, Tommy, where's Tommy? We did the strategic plan for Carlisle up in Virginia. Really, really fun place. If you think of where each of these places is located, you'll see the diversity of our work with SAIS. We've done 2 strategic plans for Carolina Day School up in Asheville. Really, really phenomenal place, and what a wonderful place to visit. Really proud of the strategic plan we just finished for Woodland Presbyterian School in the Memphis area. We have several clients in the Memphis area, and just they put together, I think, one of the very first of its kind for their school, kind of a groundbreaking strategic plan. I'm really proud of a couple schools. We're proud of all of our schools, but I'm really proud of a couple of them. Susan Lindsay put, I think, Jackson Prep on an amazing trajectory years ago, and now Jason has carried it on. They just finished their second strategic plan with our firm, Jackson Prep in Jackson, Mississippi. And I would always be remiss if I didn't talk about Ravenscroft. They've been a longtime client of ours and done some amazing work under Doreen's work. We've done 2 strategic plans for them. I share that with you to give you some sense. That's just a little sampling of the SAIS schools that we work with. They're across the board and they're all throughout the region, and we really get a chance to work really closely with schools at the regional and local level. Why else would I share that with you? That's where we go to get information. Today's topic is what we call edutrending. Now, it's a really simple concept, actually. We have always been fond as a firm of trying to watch trends. We've always found kind of interesting to play with and understand what are the most pervasive trends facing education. And sometimes those trends don't even come from education, but they come from societal shifts or from cultural shifts. So this fall we launched a new campaign. Actually, we did it over the summer, and we call it #EduTrendingNow. And what our hope was that it would reveal more insight into some of these major shifts in trends. We've always been interested in it, and when we gather information, what we try to do is share it back with people. So this is a little bit like, you know, the Justin Timberlake song, I'm a Mirror, right? We're literally being a mirror here. Most of the stuff we're going to share with you today either came from you or came to our consultants within our firm from schools. Some schools were happy to be identified, and in some cases they didn't want to be identified. But we basically reached out to thought leaders and shared what we were wanting to find out, and that is what's happening in your area and what's impacting your summer discussions is when we started it. So the questions we really asked were, what shifts are occurring in your curriculum planning? This is kind of fodder. How are you using technology to deliver education differently? What's the use of the technology piece? What changes are you detecting in student recruitment or retention? What shifts are you dealing with parents? Maybe these are generational issues that we're dealing with. Any significant changes or trends in demographics? Some cities that we work with, we pull data and we see school-aged children are increasing. In some places we see they're decreasing. It's really quite interesting from market to market and place to place. What major cultural shifts are you seeing? One that didn't make our 7 that we're going to talk about today, but I'll give you an example so you can kind of get yourself thinking at 30,000 feet. One of the things we hear heads of school talk about across the country, every place we go, is how 10 or 15 years ago, compared to today, they were doing a lot less what I would call pastoral work. And I don't mean pastoral in the church sense. I just mean the care of families and the care of the fabric of their community, kind of that motherly or fatherly pastoral role that they're playing. And if you think about where our culture has gone, it's become more and more fragmented, and more organizations which have traditionally taken on that role have stepped away from it. Of course, the head of school might end up playing that role. Another one, didn't make our list of 7, but I'll share it with you. Talk to food service directors across 15 or 20 campuses, college and university and independent schools. Guess what they'll tell you? Kids have no idea how to eat anymore. They literally are having to train people to rethink nutrition and wellness and health. Big trend. So we're kind of at a crossroads, a very unique intersection in our roles. And so we want to capitalize on that. And how are consumer mind shifts shifting? What do they want from us? And for those that have been around the room for a while, is it different than what they wanted before? Are we being asked to do some different things? Probably. So those are some of the questions. Now, Here's how it worked, and here's how I'm saying it still works, okay? You probably noticed on the first slide I listed my Twitter, my own personal Twitter is @IanSymmonds. Our company Twitter is @Symmonds, SYMMONDS. The hashtag we're using is #EduTrendingNow, okay? Now, what we're still hoping to do is actually run this campaign all year. So I'm going to be presenting to you today 7 major, what we see, inflection points, shifts, identified from a more crowdsourced perspective. Not necessarily what are we seeing, but what are we hearing people report back to us. But I'm hoping that's not where the conversation stops. I hope that it actually starts. I hope we continue to see contributions, and I would encourage each of you. So you identify a major shift or trend that's happening in your school or college in one of the following 5 areas: learning and curriculum, marketing, enrollment management, demographics, or technology. And you share that trend by posting it as a comment, like to our initial blog entry. That's one place you can do it. It's on our website. Social media, email, you can do it any way you want. We asked folks, and what you're going to see today, you're going to see actually the mention of a few names, to actually identify themselves, including their name, their title in school or college. And of course, we like to give acknowledgement, and I do have the very, very nice pleasure of speaking in front of groups like you, and so it's an opportunity for me to share what you're thinking and kind of be a voice for you, if you will. So that's kind of how it works, all right? And my sense is it worked very well. So now today, what we're going to try to do is I'm going to try to just kind of unpack 7 of these, and they're actually pretty random. They're not like all in neat, tidy boxes. Some I think are maybe 20,000 feet. Some are major shifts, 50, 60,000 feet. And they're not in any particular order as well. So, and by the way, I didn't share this at the beginning. I should have on the main title slide. Our website, iansymmonds.com, on the blog, there is this file already. So a lot of you, are probably looking, does he have handouts for this, or obviously we don't really do handouts anymore, but does he have an iPad version of this? Or it's on our website, so just download it. It's right there on our blog site. It's today's entry. You can download the PDF, what I'm speaking from. So what we hope is a new series of trends. This is what we like to study, and this is why we think you go to a conference is certainly to connect with professionals, certainly to get to know other people better, certainly to professionally network, but equally as important is this content can give you fodder that you can take back to your school community, to your board in particular, to other people in key leadership roles. So hopefully you'll post. My hope is that many of you will walk away and say, those were interesting 7. I've got one that he didn't mention. I've got something that is really suspiciously unique in our market. Love to share it, and that we'll all benefit from it. So here's what we picked up. I'm going to show you about 2 or 3 slides on each one of these. These are what I call the 7 major edu-trends, okay, that we picked up. Disconnected and disengaged. Oh, by the way, they are a little bit provocative, so and they're not all positive. I didn't say they're all really rosy. Some of them are not so good, okay? Yeah, that first one sounds pretty scary, actually. Disconnected and disengaged, I'm actually describing independent schools and colleges and universities. And I actually think it's possible that it could be to our own detriment and demise. 2, the learners are in charge, in case you haven't noticed. So let's get our priorities straight. It's not about us anymore. 3, we really actually are at the intersection of innovation and independence. I actually believe that the schools in this room can actually invent the future. We actually are the ones that are uniquely qualified, just like George Bailey was the only person in Bedford Falls uniquely qualified to save it from Mr. Potter. Right? My wife says, you're the only guy I know that thinks that's a movie about strategic planning. And I was like, it is. It's a visioning exercise. It's a classic battle of good and evil. He was running away from something that he found out at the end of the day, he's the only one qualified to pull this off. He can fight Mr. Potter, right? Get real is what I call the rise of authentic marketing. Completely unprepared, That's the status of most admission shops we find today. Sorry to say that. Data-driven, please deliver us from hunches. And then finally, there seems to be a really large conversation that really is about moving from diversity to inclusivity. And I think we're in the process right now of redefining diversity for today. Okay? Some of these things are going to be shifts that you would say, hey, I actually don't just see this happening in schools. I see this happening in my family or in my groups that I hang out with. So there might be something bigger here than we're at. So you ready? Let's go through the 7. The first one I think actually is my favorite, and so I'm doing something really damaging, and that is I didn't save my favorite for last, I saved it for first. So hopefully I'll do it justice. Disconnected and disengaged. This is to our own detriment and potential demise. Initial contributor of this is Dr. Gary Daines. He is Vice President for Enrollment Management and Marketing and currently Provost at a wonderful, wonderful college called Barton College in Wilson, North Carolina. Before that, he was Provost at Westminster College in Salt Lake City, Utah. Longtime friend, colleague, client, really, really sharp guy. And of course, in each one of these, just so you know, what we've done is we've taken this concept and we've tried to give it some legs. So we're giving credit to the trend identifier, and then we've kind of embellished and added to it from there, if you will. So if you think about it for a second, independent schools and independent colleges, keep in mind we work in both arenas, they actually flourish in a certain set of community, economic, political, and moral conditions. And actually many of those conditions are kind of under threat. I'll let you just kind of think about that for a minute. We've largely avoided explicit efforts, in my mind actually, to create and sustain the social conditions to sustain our flourishing. This is all about being internally focused versus connected externally. We're quiet in policy debates. We really are. Very quiet in policy debates. We tend not to get engaged in economic development. We leave that work to public institutions, if it happens at all. I'm not sure why, but as my 16-year-old daughter always says, I'm just saying, Dad, that's the case. And our curricula are actually more focused on developing global citizens rather than on students who are deeply committed to the places that they will live or where they currently live. You ever think about that for a minute? I'm not saying going global is a bad idea. Don't get that wrong. We live in a global world. But it is funny, I'm going to talk about this more later, we're seeing a massive shift toward everything being local. Everything being local. And moving away from global enterprise to local enterprise, right? Even in your own consumer purchases. I know that my wife and I actually go grocery shopping almost 7 days a week. That was unheard of. It used to be you go once a week to the big box retailer and you bring everything home and you store it. But no, we want something fresh every day, right? We want the salmon that just came out of the Columbia in Portland, right? Actually, it didn't still, but oh well. So, since our futures and the future of our communities are actually so tightly connected, the thesis is we need to be more active in actually building the conditions that actually sustain us. What are those conditions? This means getting involved in policy. That could be municipal policy, policy debates, maybe that actually don't even touch directly on education. If you're at day school, seems to me almost everything that happens in that community has an impact on you, because that's your community. Unless you're importing a lot of students and a lot of revenue from some other place, maybe you've got a lot of online learning, auxiliary income, or maybe you're coming from some other global enterprise. But at the end of the day, your local market is what sustains you. This also means committing to building our communities. Community building, it's several steps beyond community service. And I would even say it's a few steps beyond service learning, that language that we use often. It's a purposeful effort to support and build local businesses, nonprofits, and other organizations. Have you ever been to a thriving small college community where they are so deeply connected to that community in which they operate that, you know, you can use your student ID to pretty much like buy anything in town, right? Like every vendor has a connection to that local community. Students are welcome anywhere. It's like they're one and the same. This is kind of what we're trying to describe here. What we think is it's an intentional turn toward developing a sense of place in our students. At a time when our consumer mindsets are shifting to local, think about all the things that you now do that are more local than they were global. You're thinking of going locally to support local business. You're thinking of buying and connecting locally. Without these local efforts, the education sector will continue to be replaced by large, generic systems, which I think are to our demise, our detriment of the conditions that actually sustain us. So each one of these trends, I'm going to throw out maybe two or three questions. One, why is it that we fail to engage and shape the very culture and context in which we operate? When you think about the 1% of students in a market that go to independent schools, they're kind of opting out of mainstream culture in a lot of ways, right? I mean, it is true. When their families are driving them to school on the way to school, they're going past kids that are waiting to sit on the bus to go to the school down the road. You see that every day. Why is it that we kind of don't think of how can we shape the culture around us? Why is it we've seemingly opted out of mainstream culture and created small insulated communities and yet wonder why they're hard to sustain? I mean, I actually think that's a really important question, right? And bigger picture is, what are we teaching our students by that very endeavor? All right? So this is my favorite. You're probably like, wow, this guy's really dark. Not so much. Hang on. There's good news coming. All right, 2. The learners are in charge. So let's get our priorities straight. We're going to talk about technology today. We can't avoid a conversation without talking about technology. And this trend is probably, given whatever the lowest common denominator in the room, one that everybody has experienced. But I still think it's so pervasive, I'd be foolish not to mention it as a major trend. The initial contributor here is the provost at Northwest Nazarene University in the Boise area, Lori Worth, Dr. Lori Worth. She at one time was at College of Idaho, and before that, College of St. Mary, and also at 2 independent schools. So this is actually about professional development. This is where if you had to have a takeaway on item 2, to me, it's all about professional development. Let's see if you take away the same thing. Curriculum changes are taking place in order to meet the needs of diverse 21st century learners. The expectations of our audience in education are changing, and our medium for delivering education is shifting rapidly. And we know it's only going to continue to shift. Only going to continue to shift, and what people are going to expect from us is going to grow. It is. That's going to happen no matter what. Our students assume, I think, they make an assumption that they're going to get high-quality faculty who are engaged in the classroom, but they're also going to expect that technology will support and facilitate learning in a way that's challenging to faculty and administrators alike. It's not just challenging to the students, but it's challenging to everybody in the room. Robust learning environment. Self-paced and learner-centered learning in an academic environment that offers technology is an expectation across the board. If any of you have raised a kid and they're going to college, you're not going to find a student going to college. It doesn't matter what college they're going to that has not taken something online, they've not had wonderful experiences and drop-dead pathetic experiences with their learning environment online. I have a daughter that is a sophomore in college at Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles. Michaela has had the entire gamut of experiences in the online environment. Some of her faculty are incredibly gifted at creating an environment that is rich and robust and really learner-centered and self-paced at the sense of understanding the needs of the student and where they're at in their developmental sequence. Others, not a chance at all. And she would tell you, I mean, she'll be the first to tell you, kids are really, really honest. They're brutally honest, as you know, about reading their professors online as well. But the competition for quality and flexible education is fierce. And our students want the very best. They actually want the best in both, quality and flexibility. And you may say, well, Ian, this sounds like a college trend. No, it's not a college trend. This is a learning trend across the developmental sequence, and it's not going away. It's going to accelerate more and more and more. That's why we've called it, the learners are in charge, let's get our priorities straight. It's not about us. We don't have a syndicated right to provide education to people. I love it when Jared Diamond once said at NAIS years ago, we don't have a divine right for existence. Nobody mandated us, right? We've got to prove our value every day. We've got to be relevant every day. I like Lori's comment here. As a result of these facts, we have shifted our largest budget allocation for this academic year into the professional development for faculty within my unit. Their largest budget item now, budget allocation outside of salaries, is all professional development. They're completely shifting their orientation. It's not technology, it's professional development. Independent schools have actually historically been what I would call organizationally centric. We tend to think that the way we do things is the best way to do things. So how can we really move professional development to a learner-centered model is really what I'm posing here. And how can we embrace the fact that learners are in charge by empowering our faculty to be best in class in our brave new world? So I have a thesis that I'm going to continue to drive home today, and that is we have independence. We have some of the best human capital on our campus, on our campuses. In this collection of schools in the room, you have some of the brightest minds and the most thoughtful hearts out there. And you have independence, and you have innovation. How can we not be best in class in this brave new world? How can we not be the ones that actually come up with the answers that people are clamoring for? I think we can. So that's two.